You've been lied to, and the lie is beautiful. It told you that being an empath is your highest virtue, that your ability to feel deeply, love unconditionally, and carry others' pain is something sacred. But here's the final warning. What you call compassion might be the very thing destroying you. Because beneath the praise, beneath the "you're so strong and you're so caring," there's a silent trap. One that drains your energy not with a scream, but with a whisper. And by the time you notice it, you've already handed over your light. The worst part, it's not always toxic people doing it. Sometimes, it's the ones you love the most. And sometimes, it's you. Carl Jung didn't describe empaths directly, but he understood them better than anyone. He saw the unconscious mind as a force far more powerful than logic, and it's in this invisible space that most empaths are being pulled apart, quietly. Through shadow work, individuation, and the confrontation with our buried pain, we begin to see the truth. Your empathy isn't just a gift. It's a mirror, and what it reflects might surprise you. So if you've been tired for no reason, emotionally scattered, or feeling like you're fading into the background of your own life, this is not just burnout. It's absorption. This is where empath psychology gets serious. You're about to discover how your deepest strengths can be weaponized against you, unless you learn to protect what's sacred. Let's begin. There's something about being an empath that makes the world assume you'll always be okay. You smile through discomfort, you nod through exhaustion, and you listen. Oh, how you listen, even when your own mind is screaming for silence. This isn't just kindness. It's a silent form of self-erasure. And this is the final warning. If you don't learn how to protect your energy, the world will take it without asking. Many people out there don't mean to harm you, but unconscious minds are hungry. And when they find light, they feed. Especially when that light doesn't set boundaries. Empaths are often celebrated for their intuition and compassion. But here's the paradox. The very gift that lets you feel deeply can become the very reason you lose yourself. It's why so many empaths find themselves in patterns of emotional burnout, confused by the constant fatigue, unaware that their nervous system is on high alert 24/7. Carl Jung would call this the shadow at play, the unseen part of you that gives too much, hoping to be loved back. The signs you are an empath often begin with physical symptoms, migraines, tight chest, chronic tiredness. But by the time you notice, you've already absorbed more than any one soul was meant to carry. Many empaths mistake their exhaustion for laziness or lack of discipline, when in truth, their nervous system is running on overdrive. Studies in neuroscience show that constant exposure to emotional stress activates the same brain circuits as physical pain. That's why an empath's body often aches without explanation. It isn't weakness, it's the body sounding the alarm. Ignoring these signals only pushes you deeper into burnout. Think of the times you walked out of a family dinner, a team meeting, or even a short phone call and felt like you had just run a marathon. That heaviness isn't imaginary. It's your system carrying invisible weight. The body doesn't differentiate between your own stress and someone else's. For empaths, this blurred line becomes a daily battlefield, and the cost is paid in headaches, muscle tension, and restless nights. Modern psychoneuroimmunology even shows how emotional absorption weakens the immune system. When you hold too much, your body interprets it as ongoing threat, releasing stress hormones that compromise recovery. That's why empaths are more prone to chronic fatigue and recurring illness. Your compassion doesn't just shape your relationships, it shapes your biology. Without regulation, empathy turns into physical depletion. But there's a way back. Empaths need daily practices of energetic hygiene, just like brushing your teeth. It can be as simple as a check-in at the end of the day, asking yourself, what's mine, and what did I absorb that isn't? Some write it in a journal. Others shake their body, walk barefoot on the ground, or stand under running water to reset. These rituals may look small, but they reteach your body what belongs to you. Over time, these habits create resilience. You'll still feel deeply, because that's your nature, but you'll stop carrying what isn't yours. Imagine ending the day lighter, clearer, and actually rested, instead of drained by invisible burdens. That's not selfish. That's survival. And when your body feels safe, your empathy transforms from a source of pain into the powerful healing force it was always meant to be. You ever walk into a room and instantly feel heavy before anyone says a word? That's not imagination. It's empath psychology in action. Your unconscious mind is picking up on signals, energies, unsaid tensions. And while it sounds magical, there's a trap. Your body doesn't know how to distinguish what's yours from what's theirs. This is why healing for empaths begins not with meditation or sage smoke, but with awareness. It's understanding that you're wired to feel deeply, and that not everyone deserves that access. Learning to say no isn't cruelty. It's clarity. There's a reason many empaths score high on any empath test, but feel low in everyday life. You're not broken. You're just overloaded. You were never meant to be everyone's emotional storage unit. People with unresolved trauma and empathy issues often seek out empaths because it feels safe. But here's the twist. Their wounds become your weight. And if you don't build emotional boundaries, your light becomes a beacon for takers. The empath healing journey is not just about learning to love yourself. It's about learning when not to love others so hard that you disappear. So if you've been wondering why you're always tired, why you lose track of your own needs, why being the strong one feels like a curse, this is it. You're not just compassionate. You're exposed. And exposure, over time, leads to depletion. The collective unconscious is full of unresolved pain, and empaths are the first to feel its ripple. But let's go deeper. Why do certain people seem to find you, like moths to flame? That's where we enter the realm of predatory attraction. Some people don't just find empaths, they hunt them. It's not always intentional, but it's real. There's something about the softness of an empath, the way they listen without interrupting, the way they see what others miss, that draws in those who never learned to self-soothe. People with wounded inner children unconsciously seek out empaths like emotional oxygen tanks. It starts with a compliment, then a confession, and before you know it, you're their therapist, their cheerleader, their safe place, and they're your storm. This is where trauma and empathy become a dangerous cocktail. The unconscious mind of a wounded person is always looking for equilibrium. Jungian psychology explains this through projection. People externalize their pain to avoid facing their own shadow. And who better to project onto than someone who won't retaliate? That's you, the empath. You don't just attract attention, you attract need. But not all need is pure. Some of it is parasitic. If you've ever had someone suddenly become obsessed with your presence, only to leave you feeling completely drained after every interaction, you've met a psychic leech. This is the dark side of empath psychology. You might think, but I'm helping them. And maybe you are, for a while. But ask yourself this: are they growing, or are you shrinking? People who don't respect emotional boundaries will always test yours. They'll pull you into their chaos, slowly and subtly, until you don't remember what your peace felt like. The empath healing journey begins the moment you realize that love without limits is self-destruction in disguise. One powerful step is to track your energy levels after spending time with someone. If you're always tired around them, it's not coincidence, it's a pattern. Here's a personal example. I once mentored a young empath who kept attracting romantic partners with unresolved trauma. Every relationship started with intensity, deep talks, shared wounds, synchronicity. But over time, she became the caretaker, the healer, the emotional trash can. And when she set boundaries, they left. She was heartbroken, thinking she wasn't enough. But what she didn't realize is, she was too much for people who weren't ready to heal. That's how the empath test works in real life. The more you grow, the more you outgrow certain people. And here's the kicker. Many of these emotional drainers don't even realize they are doing it. They are not evil. They are unhealed. But that doesn't make it your job to carry them. Empath psychology doesn't mean being everyone's emotional sponge. It means learning discernment. And that brings us to the next uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, people don't just drain you, they absorb your light, without even knowing it. Let's explore the hidden dynamics of emotional absorption next. Not all wounds leave scars. Some walk and talk like compliments, admiration, even love. And yet, there's something off. You leave a conversation feeling oddly empty, like someone took something from you. This is emotional exploitation in its most subtle form. Empaths radiate presence. They feel like home. So when people are lost within their own unconscious mind, they gravitate toward that warmth. Not to harm, but to survive. And if you're not careful, they'll survive at your expense. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens here. Someone unconsciously senses your light, the empath psychology signature, and without realizing it, begins to feed off it. You become their emotional charging station. They don't thank you. They don't even know they are doing it. But your silence and empathy give them space to exist without accountability. And soon, their identity depends on your light. You'll know this is happening when you feel inexplicably anxious after helping someone, or when your joy starts to dull around certain people. You may start to question your own moods, your energy levels, your confidence. That's the leakage. This dynamic is especially common in family relationships, where emotional roles are assigned rather than earned. The responsible sibling, the emotional support daughter, the understanding friend. These roles become cages. If you don't step out consciously, you'll live out someone else's unresolved story. Empath healing requires more than rest. It requires reclamation. Reclaim your right to feel joy without guilt. Reclaim your time, your voice, your sacred no. One way to begin. Observe who interrupts your peace most consistently. Who feels entitled to your energy, your attention, your constant availability. Create space. Not silence. Space. There's a difference. Silence is fear. Space is power. The healing journey for empaths is about creating energetic room for your own voice to echo again. But let's push deeper. Why does this happen in the first place? Why are empaths so magnetic, yet so vulnerable to energetic theft? The answer lives beneath the surface of modern psychology. It's not just about personality traits. It's about what Jung called the shadow, the hidden self that shapes your emotional patterns. And that's where we are going next. Carl Jung didn't just explore the mind. He decoded the soul. His concept of the shadow isn't about evil or darkness in the cinematic sense, but about the hidden aspects of ourselves we've disowned. For empaths, this often includes boundaries, frustration, and assertiveness, traits they were conditioned to see as selfish. So instead of integrating these qualities, they exile them. But the unconscious mind, as Jung warned, doesn't just sit quietly. It influences behaviors, emotions, and relationships, especially when left unexamined. Jung's analytical psychology explains that the more we repress, the more life finds ways to reintroduce what we avoid. That smiling helper persona, it might mask unprocessed grief or people-pleasing rooted in childhood trauma. This isn't speculation. It aligns with modern findings in neuroscience and trauma studies. Researchers like Bessel van der Kolk have shown how the body keeps score, and unhealed emotional patterns are stored somatically. That means you don't just carry emotional pain mentally, you carry it in your nervous system. Functional MRI studies have revealed that emotional pain activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Think about that. When you're constantly exposed to others' suffering, without tools to ground yourself, your brain doesn't know the difference between their trauma and your own. This is why the empath healing journey must include not just emotional awareness but also somatic practices, breathwork, grounding, even cold exposure therapy. Healing isn't abstract. It's biological, psychological, and deeply spiritual. Jung believed individuation was the path to true freedom. But individuation doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means becoming whole. That requires shadow work, facing the parts of yourself you've been afraid to meet. It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about reclaiming what was buried. Many empaths unconsciously avoid this because they've been rewarded for being nice instead of real. But the unconscious mind doesn't settle for surface-level safety. It will push for authenticity, even if it shakes your identity. Once you step into shadow work, a shift begins. You stop seeking external validation and begin to hear your inner authority. You stop absorbing chaos and start sensing clarity. But as your inner light grows stronger, so does its visibility to others, to archetypes, to the collective unconscious. And that's where the paradox of being an empath truly reveals itself. Your light is a gift, but it also makes you a target. Let's explore that next. There's a strange irony to being an empath. The brighter your light, the more you attract those still trapped in the dark. Empathy is often praised as a superpower, and in many ways, it is. You can walk into a room and instantly know who's in pain, even if they are smiling. You can feel someone's sadness before they find the words. But here's the catch. Your light doesn't just illuminate. It invites. And not everyone who steps toward your light comes with good intentions. Some come to warm themselves. Others come to consume. Empaths are often caught between two internal forces, the desire to serve and the need to survive. They want to help. They want to listen. But too often, that compassion becomes a leash others use to pull them deeper into dysfunction. The unconscious mind, especially in people burdened by unresolved trauma and empathy deficits, is naturally drawn to what it cannot generate internally. And that's where you, the empath, become a symbolic source of safety and an emotional resource to exploit. This is where boundaries stop being optional. The empath healing journey demands clarity. Where do you end and others begin? Many empaths carry the belief that love means availability, and that saying no equals rejection. But real empathy includes self-empathy. If you burn out in the process of healing others, you're not a guide, you're a casualty. That's why building emotional boundaries isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. You must become fluent in the art of energetic conservation. We often talk about protection in mystical terms, white light, spiritual shields, crystals. And while those practices have value, they are only part of the equation. True protection begins with discernment. Not everyone is meant to have access to your empathy. Some connections are not synchronicity. They are trauma reenactments. And until you do the inner work to distinguish between the two, your healing path will keep looping. Shadow work and individuation are your map. Your light is sacred. Treat it as such. So here we are. You now know that your gift, your sensitivity, your depth, your ability to feel, comes with a hidden price tag. It makes you powerful, yes, but also porous. And that's not something to fear. It's something to understand. Because when you finally learn how to protect what's sacred within you, something shifts. And that's where we begin, right at the edge of something bigger. Now that you've seen the silent traps, what will you do with this awareness? Will you continue carrying pain that was never yours to begin with? Will you keep confusing emotional absorption with compassion? Or will you finally start the journey of reclaiming your own light? Protecting your light is not about hiding who you are. It's about preserving what's sacred. Empaths often confuse openness with availability, but there's a difference. Being open means you're connected to the world. Being available means the world has unfiltered access to your energy. And when you're both, without boundaries, you become a vessel that others pour into, without asking if there's room. The signs you are an empath may show up in the form of compassion, yes, but also in chronic fatigue, anxiety, and even resentment you can't explain. The first line of defense is emotional boundaries. Think of them as energetic agreements, not rules for others, but promises to yourself. A boundary can be as simple as choosing not to answer a message right away, or deciding not to attend every crisis you're invited to. Many empaths grew up in households where love was earned through over-responsibility, so now, guilt shows up every time they try to step back. But here's the truth. Guilt is not always a signal of wrongdoing. Sometimes it's just the echo of old conditioning. If you struggle to say no, try this instead. I need to think about it. This buys you time to check in with your emotional capacity before making a decision. When someone pushes past your boundary, remember, your worth isn't tied to their comfort. Practicing small numbers builds your tolerance for discomfort, which builds your emotional resilience. This isn't just spiritual wisdom, it's psychological hygiene, and it's essential for empath healing. A clean boundary is not rejection. It's self-recognition. Let's talk tools. Grounding practices are the empath's anchor. Meditation, cold showers, breathwork, nature walks. These aren't spiritual trends. They are nervous system resets. They teach your body how to return to you. Empaths often disassociate under stress, especially after absorbing someone else's emotional load. Grounding reconnects the body to the present. Want something practical? Try the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Name 5 things you see, 4 you can touch, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. It rewires the brain into now. Then there's individuation. Jung described it as becoming who you truly are, not who you were taught to be. For empaths, individuation is revolutionary. It's the moment you stop performing emotional safety for others and start honoring the truth of your inner self. This process often includes recognizing your own trauma and empathy overlap. Maybe you became hyper-aware of others to avoid your own emotional needs. That's not a flaw. It's a survival strategy you no longer need. Individuation means breaking the cycle of over-identifying with others' pain. It's realizing that just because you feel it doesn't mean you caused it, or have to fix it. It also means giving yourself permission to disappoint people. Yes, you read that right. Healing for empaths sometimes looks like disappointing people who expected you to keep playing a role that was never yours to begin with. Individuation is not a comfortable journey, but it is liberating. What gets measured gets managed. And that applies to your emotional energy too. Keep a soul journal where you track your emotional state before and after conversations, environments, or tasks. Did you leave that phone call feeling heavy? Did that group chat elevate you or drain you? Over time, you'll start noticing patterns. Empath psychology teaches us that awareness is the first step toward healing. Don't just feel, reflect. Self-analysis is not overthinking. It's reclaiming authorship of your emotional script. Also, supervision. If you're a helper by nature, therapist, coach, healer, caretaker, get supervision. Not just for ethics, but for emotional containment. Someone who can help you process what you're holding. Because here's the truth, even the most grounded empath gets flooded sometimes, especially when doing shadow work or deep inner child healing. Find people, whether therapists, mentors, or conscious peers, who know how to hold space without trying to fix you. That's gold. And don't forget synchronicity, those moments when the universe seems to speak back. When you're protecting your light, synchronicity becomes more frequent. Why? Because you're aligned. You're no longer leaking energy in 100 directions. You're present. And when you're present, you notice. That book falling off the shelf. That random phrase that repeats. That coincidental meeting. The unconscious mind responds to stillness. When you stop pouring into everyone else, the universe starts pouring into you. Lastly, remember this. Your light is not meant to be available 24/7. Even stars rest behind the clouds. The empath healing journey is not about becoming a better emotional container. It's about learning when to open and when to close. Like breath, like the tide. You can love deeply and still choose solitude. You can hold space for others and still hold your own boundaries sacred. And the moment you realize that, you step into a new level of sovereignty. You have the power to protect your energy without closing your heart. You can still be deeply loving, wildly intuitive, and beautifully empathic, without being emotionally hijacked. But it starts with one question. Where have you been giving your light away without realizing it? Are you ready to stop leaking your energy and start leading with clarity, boundaries, and truth? If this message spoke to your soul, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Hidden Mind and turn on notifications, because the healing journey is just beginning. We'll explore empath healing, shadow work, the wisdom of Carl Jung, and everything your heart was never taught in school but always knew deep down. And remember, your light was never meant to be dimmed. It was meant to be protected.